Hey folks, welcome to this channel. This is the nuts and bolts of pool. This is a continuation of the series, Winning the Mental Game of Pool. We hope to help you answer all kinds of questions you may have about concentration. For example, you ask yourself, why do you play flawlessly during practice, but fall apart during league or tournament matches? What about this? How do I deal with sharking or pool etiquette? Some even ask themselves, how do I prevent one missed shot from causing a multi-game downward spiral? Well, you are at the right place to cover all of this and much more. So sit back and we'll be covering concentration, focus, and distractions when it comes to playing pool in this episode. There's a pro that comes to mind when I think about concentration. I'm not going to say his name, but he suffers from a certain reputation of falling apart when it matters. Despite being a top 10 ranking and many top 3 finishes and more in like 10 years of touring, this player has yet to win a pro tournament. If you know what to look for, you can spot the crash and burn moment. His posture changes with the shoulders going slack in the body, moving around and dipping down. As the player moves around the table, this is the moment his concentration vanishes, okay? The player would probably deny it, insisting that the fact that concentration increases after all. If you watch, you can see an intense effort to think through and focus on every shot. It's obvious from his ill-controlled bodily movement. However, that concentration is gone. And concentration, contrary to popular belief, is always about the body. Everyone knows concentration is crucial to good play. What is remarkable is how poorly most advisors of the mental game understand the critical factor. If you have the courage to ask your instructor what he means when he keeps saying concentrate, most likely he will give you a bunch of phrases that seem to say the same thing but really do not. For example, like focus. Don't let anything distract you. Focus on what, you may ask. Avoid distractions. How? He will probably tell you what to think or not to think about. Don't think about the score. Don't think about the last bad shot you made. Just focus on what's in front of you, okay? If you ask, he will probably offer you some gimmick telling you to develop a ritual or an internal command to focus on specific item, like, say, the chalk or the Q-tip or the point of aim. None of this is terribly wrong, but none of it's particularly helpful when you're definitely playing the game of pool. The word concentration comes from the same root as consent. It is like a centered circle. It simply means with a center. To concentrate is to establish a center around which all matters are systematically arranged. Concentration is simply centered, well-ordered thinking. You may ask, what is well-ordered thinking in shooting pool? Well, let's start with a very abstract general description. When you have a task to accomplish, the proper center of your thinking is the thing. For example, within your control, that secondly, you will determine whether you accomplish your goal. Well-ordered thinking connects the center of the goal taking into account everything that will affect whether you attain the goal or not. You may organize your thinking to consider everything that will affect whether the task will succeed. What obstacles, opportunities, obligation tools, and sources of information can, or in some cases, must you work with? Each element involved in the task, everything that poses a choice of what to do, must be given a specific place in your thinking. Appropriate to its role and fulfilling the goal, you must decide that what will be done at every step of the way. In doing so, you construct a dynamic image of the task. You construct an essence like a movie in your mind, representing exactly what is going on and what's happening. The quality of your concentration depends on the completeness of your dynamic image. The motion of the object ball is derived from the cue ball, which gets its energy from the stick motion, which derives from your body. The center of the shot is always your body. That's the only thing that you can control. Your dynamic image of the shot centers on the bodily motions necessary to make the shot. Concentration always starts from and centers on your body. Central to your mental organization is the current state of your body, what motions it must execute to complete the shot, and how to get from here, which is your current bodily state, and to there, which is your completed stroke. Everything else, the cue stick, the cue ball, the object ball, the lay of the table, the competitive situation, this all constitutes information the mind needs to guide the body. Anything that may contain information must be considered and evaluated. This is the entire and exclusive value of everything other than the information about your body. This is to give your mind the information to tell your body what to do. So the first phase of concentration is constructing a dynamic mental image of the shot. You will imagine the shot taking place across time. This dynamic image, however, must be comprehensive and precise. Your dynamic image of the shot factors in all of the information provided by the lay of the balls, the motion of the cue stick, and so forth. Each element gives information on what your body must do. The information is arranged into a moving picture of what will happen as you shoot. This image will guide what psychologists call a feed-forward process. You'll hear that a lot. Any kind of deliberate, purposeful action, including making a pull shot, depends on a feed-forward approach. So, feed-forward, it consists of, firstly, a mental representation, sort of like a dynamic image of what is going to happen. Secondly, attention to what in fact is happening as you undertake the action. And third of all, comparison of the action to the image. And lastly, correcting the action where need be to conform to the image. The image guides the action in a sense of speaking, okay? The term feed forward refers to the fact that the image of what is going to happen projects forward into the future. Fundamental to well-ordered thinking is a dynamic image, adequate to guide the feed-forward process. Constructing an adequate feed-forward image in images only to the first phase of the concentration. The second phase of concentration is the feed for process itself. And this process you undertake, the action your feed-forward image portrays, and you attend to the combination between this image and what you actually do, correcting your motions along the way by referring or referencing to your feed-forward image, so to speak. Since the second phase of concentration involves guiding your action by comparing them to your feed-forward image, the image must be detailed and complete. For example, if you don't have a representation of what's going to happen from the beginning to the end, your body will lack guidance at some point of the shot. At this point, no matter how careful your focus on some other part of your shot, you will in essence shoot blindly at the ball. Quite literally, you will have no idea of what you're doing. Since pool is a game of small motions, you need only a small gap in your feed-forward image, a minute moment in time in which your body must guess how to get from one motion to the next to ruin your entire shot, okay? Perhaps the most overlooked dimension of planning a shot and an absolute crucial element of the feed-forward image is the precise bodily sensations you will have at each step of the way. Your body, of course, obviously can receive information only through its own sensations. So anticipating what each step of the shot will feel and look, and of course, even sound like, is critical if you are to compare what you planned with what actually happens. Your dynamic image must include exactly what sensory experiences you expect will occur at each moment in the action. This, in a nutshell, is concentration, okay? It's basically constructing a complete image of the shot, centering your body, then undertaking and guiding your bodily motions by reference to this image. By reference to this image, I mean you pay attention to what you actually do, compare it to the image, and then make corrections as needed. When we act, mostly body sensation never enters awareness. And if we had to wait for our conscious awareness of each sensation to make a conscious comparison of each sensation with our feed-forward image, we would lose the opportunity to act. Fortunately for us, we've evolved extensive unconscious machinery to take care of this problem, okay? To develop the unnatural level of skill required to play pool, however, we must train our usually unconscious processes consciously to perform at our top level of play. If we are able to concentrate to the extent necessary to play well, we must develop a rich repertoire of feed-forward images through deliberate conscious practice. Then let them do the work as we play. Concentration calls into action unconscious controls as we've consciously developed over time, okay? Precisely for this reason, learning to concentrate is not a matter of learning to focus. Quite to the contrary, learning to concentrate requires developing unconscious processes that function smoothly from planning the shot to follow through. By definition, we can't focus on unconscious processes. Learning to concentrate requires developing skills on which we rarely focus, okay? To develop your concentration, you absolutely must cultivate keen bodily awareness when you practice. This seems unnatural. You want to pay attention to the object ball or the cue stick, not your body. I mean, that's obvious, right? It is unnatural in the sense, I have already explained this, that, for example, play hones skills beyond their natural states. You must deliberately and consciously, systematically develop an accurate sense of the bodily sensations involved in executing your shots correctly. You will not want to have done this routinely focus on such sensations anymore. They will, however, always be the center of your shooting. Without this, your feed-forward process and thus your concentration will always be faulty in a sense. So how exactly do you concentrate, you ask? Well, when you are learning to concentrate, as with any new skill, you need to control your thinking deliberately. You need to make a conscious effort to think through the entire picture of the shot. What must that picture include, you say? Well, let me use the metaphor of a centered circle, okay? Psychologists say that you can be aware of several items of information, plus or minus 2 at a time. We can imagine 7 circles of concentration. At the center is always your body. Each of the other circles of attention, we may call them, okay, refers back to the body. Here, feed-forward image is complete only if it includes the bodily sensations each outer circle implies. You must know the sensations to expect in relation to the cue ball, the cue stick, the point of aim, and so forth, right? A lot of questions can go through your mind when it comes to concentration. Here's a lot of them that affect most people when they're playing. They think, what will the stance feel like? The tension in your hand as you hold the stick. Maybe perhaps the angle of the wrist. You might think, how about the motion of your arm? Or maybe what will the cue stick look like as it moves through the stroke? There's always a lot of questions you could ask, but what you see as you are at the point of aim, how about, let's say, how about the cue ball travels in a line? A lot of people even may be thinking as the cue ball and the object ball make contact. Or what about as the object ball travels toward the pocket and the cue ball moves across the table? Every element of the shooting situation gives your body instructions, even the image of how the balls will move around the table after you have made the stroke. Like which might seem quite beyond your body, gives you crucial information. This image calls forth your memories of how much force in English to use to make the balls move exactly the way and precisely what it feels like to do exactly that. The image of your cue stick following through the cue ball likewise guides your emotions, right? With every action aiming to make the stick move smoothly to the follow-through point, you control the stick more effectively before it ever even gets there, right? Every beginning player thinks follow-through is irrelevant, and no one explains why this is an error. Well, when you do think, the stick goes out of control to the end and ends up, and what out of the line after contacting the cue ball. Do you think you control the stick beautifully just up to the point of contact and then lose control of it? Hardly, I'd say, okay? Follow through is important because getting from the start of the stroke to the proper follow through position controls the stick all the way through the stroke, right? Some people would have you believe you should pay no attention to the competitive situation or the game room environment, but that's just silly, okay? You will in fact pay attention to the competitive situation. Are you back 3 games early in a race to 11 or late? Are you ahead on a roll? Is there money on the match? We are humans, not robots, okay? And the competitive situation affects our concerns, hence our actions. The only question is whether you will think about these things deliberately and decide exactly what they mean for you in your shot, or whether you will let them kick around, underdress, or be disruptors of your play. Just how should you think about them? That's the question. Even the game room environment is relevant. What, if anything, is going on that you need to take into account? Anyone who waits to shoot until some distracting motion has ended demonstrates how a good player notices what is happening and then room and factors it in, okay? While you are assessing and planning, let your attention bounce back and forth from one circle to another play with the possibilities how each might be experienced if you shoot one way rather than the other. Let your unconscious knowledge make its contribution, pay attention, okay? Consistently to the hunches your unconscious processing provides and play with them along with all of the other possibilities you imagine letting an image of the shot take shape. What matters is not some ritualized method of thought, but letting yourself create a complete feed-forward image while you are learning to concentrate. Double check the image as it emerges. Have you failed to consider anything? Do you lack the anticipatory sensation of some point in the process? Using information, I want you to create a movie in your mind, so to speak. Imagine how the elements will combine. Imagine the sequence of every motion and sensation from approach to follow through. Only when you have developed this dynamic image are you ready to shoot. okay? When you have a sense of how the whole shot is going to start, your shot as you drop down over the table, notice the sensations you're having, check them against your dynamic image. Are the cue ball moving the stick toward it in your practice stroke? I have the object ball and so forth, always comparing the sensations to the feed forward image. Where your sensation is different from what you expect, correct your emotions and go get up, start over. Always the sensations of the shooting motion and the feed forward image intertwine dramatically as you check the real processes of shooting against the feed forward image. Always awareness of your body must be the central as you shoot. Okay? This process will feel awkward as you practice it because you literally are trying to focus consciously on what is usually unconscious and will be again. As you become adept to attaining every element of the constructing a feed forward image and attending to it as you shoot, you will need to pay less conscious attention to the process. When you have mastered the process of concentration, it'll usually flow easily and you will no longer have to remind yourself of different steps. Just as you do not have to check your bridge, like your stance and so forth. Once you have learned them and you're playing fluidly, as with all pool knowledge, learning makes it automatic and you will need to make a deliberate effort only when something is wrong. Let's say, you say, what then? What about focus? Right? That's your question. Most advice on focus is simply wrong in two ways. For the one thing, concentration is not the same thing as focus. You learn to focus while failing to pay attention to most of what concentration should deal with. For example, focus does not follow any set rules, okay? You simply should not always focus on the same thing. Focus shifts within each shot and from one shot to another. Concentration and practice the whole of your thinking includes unconscious controls of the elements of consciousness outside of your focus. Focus is part of the consciousness and only a part. We know that consciousness consists of a figure, right? Which is the object of your focus, and ground, which is most of the content of the consciousness. Even within the consciousness, focus is only a small part of your mental activity. If you think focus is essential, for the essence of concentration, you will usually leave most of what you need to think about unattended. You will pay attention to only part of consciousness, leaving all of the rest of your mental organization, which is most of your mental activity, to chance. You will fail to master most of the mental organization essential to concentration. You will lack the breadth, so to speak, of the mental control to play well. Now, I want you to note that you should not always focus on the same thing. Focus will vary from situation to situation depending on which information you can successfully process without bothering to be conscious. Focus is always relative to what you know. That is what is automatic for you and what requires most conscious control. What situation you face and how you are playing at that specific time. Advice that tells you to always focus on a certain thing attempts to make consciousness something it isn't, okay? Namely, a constant. Consciousness, as we have seen, concerns itself with contingencies and choices. Contingencies, by definition, cannot be predicted. You can't know in advance what choices you will face or what must be considered to make and execute the shot you choose. If you're an advanced player, okay, and having a good night, you will pay little conscious attention to your body or the mechanics of shooting. These are so routine for you that you have relatively few choices to make. Some shots may require attention to the angle of the stick. If you're jacked up behind a ball, or careful focus on the point of aim when you left the cue ball too close to the object ball. But for the most part, you will focus on strategy or rhythm or the smooth, wonderful feeling of how well you're shooting and playing, all right? But not concentrating and focus on other things. Most of us have a few of these nights, and even the best pros have more nights of hard choices than magically perfection. The less advanced our abilities are, the less that is automatic for us, the more attention we have to pay to bodily sensations or the mechanics of shooting. Focus is the center of consciousness. No one can tell in advance where focus should be on a particular shot other than this. You should focus on whatever requires the most conscious attention at the moment of shooting. If you always focus on the same thing, you have defeated the purpose of conscious attention. You have made consciousness a constant, not the executive in charge of contingencies. You have made yourself mentally rigid and guaranteed that much of the time you will be focused on, most likely, the wrong thing, okay? Many and perhaps most instructors forget that you perceive many things consciously besides what is at the center of your attention. Perhaps these rules about what you should always focus on tell you correctly that you must always be conscious of certain things. You will, for instance, always have a conscious perception of the point of aim, but it need not be your focus. You may want to give an occasion focus on like the sensations involved in moving the cue stick or maintaining the balanced stance or hitting the cue ball or just the right spot. Even your conscious awareness of the point of aim works just fine. You have to know what you are good at. You have to know what you have and have not mastered. You have to know how well you are playing, how challenging is a particular shot will be for you under circumstances that you face. You have to know what requires the most conscious attention on each individual shot you face. Understanding that constitutes proper concentration. It can help you choose focus. You can run through a checklist of what constitutes a complete feed-forward image and see whether you have each element under control. Then focus whatever you fall short on, okay? Something you will never learn is you confuse focus and concentration. Is that better? You are the least or less conscious effort you must expend to achieve concentration. The more skills you commit to the realm of the automatic, and the more you cultivate good habits of mental organization, the less attention you must pay to achieve concentration. Your habits of concentration themselves become automatic. You acquire habits of concentration by practicing them rather than reinventing your good mental organization through conscious effort every time you step up to the table. For the best players, playing at their best focus has next to nothing to do with concentration. They're just excellent automatic abilities give them concentration unconsciously. And consciousness is free to consider the most advanced contingencies. The worst thing you could do while trying to cultivate good mental habits is to forget the entire concentration process and focus just on some predetermined facet of shooting if you focus without attaining to the broader task of concentration. You will like the pro who falls apart, almost always ignores most of what you need to think about, confuse concentration with focus, and you will lack both the breadth, so to speak, of the mental order and the flexibility of your mind to play well. Well, what about the advice to, let's say, a voice distraction? What are we to make of that? In one sense, we obviously want to avoid distraction. We want to avoid disorderly thinking, disorganized play, yet in two senses is the usual advice about avoiding distraction is bad advice. First, the usual advice is don't think about it, right? This is this, that, or the other. The score, the competitive situation, the difficulty of the situation, the joy of being so far ahead, whatever. Don't think about it is just that advice. Anything that captures your attention requires your attention. We are creatures whose neurological evolved to alert us to things relevant to our concerns. We cannot unhook this wiring just to play pool. If something captures your attention, you need to address it, if only to decide it actually pertains to no current need at all. Generally speaking, your mental machinery won't bother you to alert you to bring to like things that can be taken care of automatically. You become conscious of contingencies that require decisions. If an idea occurs like to you, your mental mechanism has sent you a message. This requires attention. I don't know what to do with it. If you put the idea out of your mind, you are like a bad manager who just ignores his people and then just leaves the issue for them to hash out unguided. Consider this notion, okay? That you should put negative thoughts out of your mind, okay? In fact, if a negative thought occurs to you, you need to deal with it. Ignoring it won't make the concern that prompted it go away. In fact, it will take you seriously a thought to think them through, and you can use them to focus instead on your play. Consider some of these examples, for example, right? Suppose you're down 6-2 in a race to 11. You think, oh man, I'm in deep trouble. He only has to win 5 before I win 9. The correct response to such thoughts would be something like this, for example. That's true, no doubt about it. Still, he won 6 out of the first 8. I could just win 6 of the next 8. I need to settle down and choose each shot wisely, then stay carefully centered on my body. I can't go getting panicky. Or suppose you have just missed a fairly easy shot and left your opponent easy run out for the 3rd time tonight. Well, what an idiot am I? Just trying to lose this thing? What is wrong with me? I deserve to lose this one. You should dismiss all the concerns, or you could just take them seriously. It's true. If he concentrates and plays well, and I don't, he deserves the win, not I. Really, what is going on with me? I'm getting too cocky. Is my mind somewhere else? What? Take time to answer your own questions, okay? If in fact your mind is somewhere else, you need to know where and why. Just deal with it. Whatever is calling you away from good play, just deal with it. Suppose you're down like 8-6 and your opponent misses 7 ball, but leaves you on the head spot with your cue ball on the bottom rail. Oh, I can't believe this. I finally get a break, and this is the break I get. This is really low percentage shot. I miss this. If he runs out, then it's 9-6. All of this is true. You have 2 correct opinions here. First, you say to yourself, right, this is not a great break. I won't pretend it is. Maybe I can make something, or it maybe not. What's the highest percentage play here? I'll just play that one and take the consequences. Second, you might say this is not a great opportunity to win. Still, I have about 20% chance of pulling off a winner with this shot. All right, that's what I'll try. I know it's a bit risky, but that's my choice. Then you focus on the shot, try it, and if you miss, you just say, well, I shot it as well as I can. No guts, no glory. The worst thing you can do in this situation is psychologically is to say, Think positive. A great shot pulls this to 8 to 7. Forget the negatives. Why is this so bad? Because you are banking on a low percentage possibility. So the possibility is that you will end up disappointed and angry with yourself. Would you sell a car to buy lottery tickets? That's irrational to invest your hopes in a highly improbable situation. Sometimes the truth is your negative thoughts has to be teased out of excessive pessimism, basically. But even here, you need to face the truth and decide on a constructive response. Suppose that you realize you are simply overmatched. Your opponent is much better than you. I might as well go home and have no chance against this guy. The element of truth is this: you have only a slim chance of winning. The constructive response might be to create a conservative strategy, look for weaknesses you might exploit, and get real fascinated by the challenge. The worst case is that you will lose the match that by right you ought to lose. Where's the shame in that? If you pay attention and raise to the challenge, this is an opportunity to test yourself and learn something, not the time to go home. In general, negative thoughts contain information you need to take seriously. You could use this information to study yourself by thinking, that's true, which is all the more reason to settle down and take my time and concentrate. The idea that you don't need a lot of negative thoughts distracting you from your place, correct, but the idea that putting such thoughts out of your mind helps anything is just wrong. You deal with negative thoughts by addressing them. A question answered is a question laid to rest. A question ignored is basically a constant irritant. If you understand concentration, and it's a well-ordered thinking process, you can think about anything of concern without disrupting your play. The issue is not to ignore certain kinds of thoughts. The issue is to put them where they belong in relation to shooting. A negative thought, I can improve your play if you use it to motivate yourself to get to your dynamic image of the shot in order to carry it out smoothly. A negative thought disrupts play only if you decide that in fact there's no point bothering to shoot well. If you're so busy with the negative thought that you don't bother to get your mind in good order, in these cases the problem is not the negative thought. The problem is that you allow it to keep you from putting your mind in order. A second, more interesting fact about distracting is this: sometimes it helps. Indeed, some of the most common advice about concentration probably works precisely because it distracts us. Our brain seems to have a very distinct system of handling verbal information and sensory information. While the two relate to each other in many ways, some tasks are best executed under sensory rather than verbal guidance. Pool is one of these tasks, which is why many of the best players are bad teachers. They just cannot put into words, hence cannot convey to others what goes on when they shoot. A feed-forward image in pool is not a verbal matter, but a visual and a kinesthetic one. Yet many of us, especially under pressure, are likely to try to think our way through the shot verbally. Okay, now, for example, do this, and then this. I mean, this is dangerous verbal thinking, unlike sensory representations, has no intrinsic tie to bodily motion. We can talk a good game without the skills to play one, and preoccupation with words can cause us to lose track of the bodily intelligence crucial to concentration. A player should note that the processing and spatial relations of special importance to us takes place in a completely different part of the brain than verbal processing. If you can distract your verbal awareness, so that it does not interfere with your visual or tactile awareness. You may enable your sensory and unconscious controls to work more smoothly. Most personal commands, or self-talk probably, work to keep your verbal processes occupied while other processes control your thoughts. By occupying your consciousness with an unmanding simple set of words, you prevent yourself from putting your energy into verbal thoughts that consume attention and disrupt the sensory nominated feed of your process. What kind of distraction should we avoid then? Anything that includes bad pull advice that disrupts concentration. Anything that prevents a well-formed feed for process centered on your body. Here and again, there are no set rules, okay? How many times have you seen a guy begin to shoot better when a beautiful woman starts to play on the next table, for example? Or how many times have you seen a guy completely lose concentration when a beautiful woman starts playing in the next table? One person's distraction may be another's motivation. There are no rules dictating what you should not pay attention to, because distraction is not an objective thing. Distraction is a way of thinking. Thinking in a badly ordered manner. How do you avoid distraction, you wonder? Well, how do you avoid falling off a log? By doing a good job of walking across it, I would say. You avoid distraction by doing a good job of concentrating on it. If you occupy yourself by constructing a complete feed-forward image, you don't begin to shoot until you have it. And you attend to the sensations of your shooting, comparing them to the feed-forward image, then you simply will not be distracted, okay? You may take longer than necessary to construct your feed-forward image, but if you go off of tangents before you settle on it, you may take longer to shoot. If you have to correct it all those sorts of things that are alien to you, to the bodily sensations at the center of your feed-forward image, as long as you know what constitutes good concentration though, and you do whatever you need on a given shot to get there, you can think about whatever you want along the way. When you concentrate fully, you come close to achieving because of the stage of it being one. Your unconscious processes move through consciousness without construction, melding with the table, the room, the game itself. Consciousness is but one part of the process, and by no means the ruler of it, okay? You feel one with the process. It's just part of the flow of the playing pool. Concentration is not just a means to play better. If your concentration is well formed, your experience of shooting will have very good coherence and completeness of a good story, or let's say, or a beautiful song. Your bodily motion will be fluid. You'd be almost like you're choreographed by the feed-forward image, guided by a well-ordered mind that plays and it achieves a sensual and pragmatic unity and completeness. The pleasures of play organized through the well-ordered mind become more than random moments of satisfaction. They unite into something like, almost like a work of art, okay? Well, this is what I want to say, okay? Folks, this is our discussion, okay, about concentration, focus, and distraction, and how it relates to play and pull. If you found this useful, and I hope so, and something you can apply to your game, I would encourage you to please subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't already, it's called The Nuts and Bolts of Pool. Check out our playlists we have on the channel, and make sure you watch our videos to learn some great lessons we have already on there, and some that we're going to have in the future to help you with your pool game. We will be having future videos for sure that would definitely pique your interest and help you on your journey to becoming a better pool player. And for now, I thank you for watching this. And until next time, the nuts and bolts of pool. We'll see you later. Signing out. Goodbye.